Hey there, my friends. This one strategy is a strategy that's actually helped me stay on track and stay in my performance zone with every single call. Hey there, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Logistics Life. And in today's show, what I want to talk about is actually something that let me start this way. Have you ever done something and not really realized how powerful the formula could be? And this is something that happened to me probably a decade and a half to 2 decades ago. I started looking at my follow-ups in a little bit of a different way. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure you've had the point where you come in, and whether you have a CRM or whether you're doing a paper system, you come in and you got 20 follow-ups for the day, hypothetically, right? And at the end of the day, you realize, I didn't do any of them. You're like, oh, but I was busy with this, I was busy with that. So then you move on to the next day. Now, depending on what systems you use, the next day might bring in a whole new set of problems, and the leads are gone, you forgot the follow-up, and so on and so forth. So I started looking at it from a different angle, and I started thinking about the idea of, when we say to somebody, we're going to do something, right? One thing I've said to my kids is, your word is your bond. And I'm sure you've all heard that. I'm sure everyone's taught you that, when you tell somebody you're going to do something, do it. When you tell a client you're going to do something, you do it. So I started taking my follow-up, and I started to say to myself, what if I assumed that every prospect I spoke to, and some people laugh when I say this, but every prospect I spoke to writes down in their calendar when I'm going to get back to them? Because I started looking at it. And here's the thing that I'm going to ask you, and this is where this mindset shift came from a little bit. So I'll ask you this. In your day-to-day life, right? When somebody says they're going to get back to you on X day, what do you do with that information? Right? So for me, I plug it into my calendar right away. The reason I do that is because if I'm working with somebody in a professional manner, and I'll share with you how I do it in my personal life, but in a professional manner, I've got so many things happening in my professional life that I have to keep track of them. So things like my daily agenda, my Notion calendar, my Google calendar, all these things that sync, right? People are booking meetings here and all this. So I have to keep track of how it all works. So for me, the easiest thing is while I'm on email or while I'm on a phone call, I'll kind of flip through, because my agenda has like a calendar in it. I'll flip through, and on that calendar, I'll just put person's initials reply. Now, here's the thing when it comes to business, right? In business, I believe, just like I hope you feel the same way, that you want to deal with professionals. You want to deal with the best of the best. Like, I'm not interested in hiring a fifth-rate accountant to help me get the most out of my money, or investor to help me get the most out of money. I'm not interested in hiring a fifth or sixth-rate sales rep that's going to take me for every dime I have and not provide me extreme value. And I'm sure you're in the same way. And I'll guarantee you one thing, all of your customers are feeling that as well. So what I do is I start keeping track of who says they're going to do what. I'll give you a perfect example. So I work with a couple of people that send me emails and say, hey, do you want to have these people on your podcast? I read their books. I watch their podcasts. And I'm like, sure, I'd love to interview them. I had a call set up where this person was supposed to get on the call. Never sent me an email, just ghosted. So I replied back to the person that was sending the email saying, okay, here's the deal. Like, strike one, and this is not to be an asshole, but it's the fact that I'm busy and I've got a lot of things on the go, and so are you. There's, like, we all have the same amount of hours in the day. It's what we want to put out, right? And I said, just ensure people show up, because I won't have another interview with this person because they just decided to waste my time. And so I look at this and I take this into business all the time. And so I always assume. Now, some people will say, assuming makes an asset of you or me. I believe if we assume in the right way, it actually helps us stay on track. So my assumption is this. When I tell somebody I'm going to follow up with you in 3 days, I believe and I work under the premise that they mark that in their calendar. And if I don't follow up, I've not kept my word. Now, you could probably see it at this point. Follow-ups take on a whole new meaning. If you tell somebody you're going to do something, meaning if somebody tells you, call me in a month, I'm not ready, speak to me in a month, and you call in 2, you're not listening. Why would you? And again, maybe I'm totally off base here, and I'd love to get your feedback, but the fact for me is, if I tell you to call back in a month, I'm putting it on my calendar that I'm expecting your call that day. And all I'm doing is adding into the top corner, just something where I know I'm expecting your call. It won't even go in my digital calendar. It'll just go in my paper calendar, because I take this everywhere with me. And I find my paper calendar is easier just to flip to the day or the day of the month, because it's one tab and it's one page. And I just, okay, this is who I'm expecting calls from today. And I do it with every single person, and little sub here, anyone that deals with me in business, this is what's happening in the background, y'all. And if they don't do what they say they're going to do, they get an X. And I don't mean to be a dick, but the fact is that if you're looking at moving at rapid speeds, if you're looking at scaling your business, scaling your company, scaling your agency, then you need people around you that are going to do what they say they're going to do. I mean, even to the point when it comes to team members, colleagues, business, but like everybody, you need to do what you say you're going to do. If you say, I'm going to get it to you at this point. And trust me, I've had days where it's like, I promised way too much today. How in the hell am I going to get all this done? And it stresses you out. So what I started to learn, and this is probably only over the last year, I started to really learn, okay, what is my real big output a day? Because I believe, as much as people say, I 15, 17 hours today. Yes, I mean, I'm working a good 14 to 16 hours a day. Yeah, probably, because I stay up at night until close to midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, sending emails and that kind of stuff, and just catching up on things and everything, doing training and all that. So when I say working, I mean, I'm doing training, I'm learning new tools, new software, new processes, new workflows. I'm doing training. I'm doing my personal training, my personal development, my personal and business development. But I'm starting to get a lot more focused in on this assumption piece. So again, that assumption is there. Now, here's a second piece of the puzzle when it comes to assuming, right? We all have our own assumptions. We all have what we call intuition, right? The thing I think most of us struggle with is we never say, what is that person's intuition telling them? And, I often say to people, well, if I can see it, other people can see it, right? And so for me, that's one big thing is I'm always sharing that in my emails. So for example, and this is the assumption, this is all ties back together. People should just please stay with me for a minute. Right. I had a follow-up yesterday, hypothetically. Well, no, actually. And the reason why I switched out the original show for today with this show is because it's so fresh in my mind, I really wanted to share it. So I had a couple of follow-ups yesterday. I also had a meeting yesterday afternoon that pulled me out of the office from about 3:30 until about 6 by the time I drove back and all that kind of stuff. So now it's 6. I get home, now it's dinner time. Now from dinner time, it's like, then there's dinner, then there's cleanup. So before I know it, it's 8 o'clock at night. And I'm like, and I look and I'm like, I totally forgot. And I'm pretty good at the end of every day going, okay, this is what's done. This is what I need to do in transferring things tomorrow and sending the emails and, following up saying, hey, listen, didn't have time to do it today, but I'll put it first thing on my list for tomorrow. It was kind of 8 or 9 today, didn't get through it. And so I've done all of this, right? Well, yesterday I just happened to get up and bolt because I, as probably most of you do, I get lost in my work. So when I came in, I was like, oh my gosh. So what I did is I operated with the assumption that they wrote it down. And if I could tell, they could tell. So I and again, as silly as this might sound, I'm picturing when I'm sending an email, I'm picturing my prospect looking at their watch and saying, interesting. Dan said he was going to get back to me today and he didn't get back to me. And so I address that in the email. I don't allow their intuition or anything to kick in. I say, hey, listen, my bad. I was supposed to get back to you today. I decided to head out to a meeting without double checking my follow-ups. Totally my fault. I apologize. I know it's, and this is the second part of it, I know it's 8:30 at night, so they don't just think it's some automated thing, pretending that I missed. This is kind of, can we do this, or this is the answer, or this is the follow-up, or whatever. And I do that all the way up until midnight if I have to, because I do believe no matter what, that if they wrote down, I'm getting back to them today, I need to do that. And so I hope this clarifies a little bit for y'all when it comes to follow-ups and assumptions. But I always assume, because this formula for really high productivity is to keep that assumption first and foremost, right? Like you tell a prospect, I'm going to get you rates. Assume they wrote that in their calendar, that by tomorrow at noon, you get them rates. That means by tomorrow at noon, you get them a rate. Not 1 o'clock, not 2 o'clock in the afternoon, before noon. And I often, when I'm following up, as discussed, I told you I would follow up today. As discussed, I told you I would get the rates to you before this time. As discussed, I advised this, because I do that for a specific reason, because I want them to see that I'm listening, and I want the prospect to see, or the customer to see, that they can count on me for doing what I say I'm going to do. Because as the great Tony Montana said, the great philosopher Tony Montana said, all I have in this world is my word and my balls, and I don't break them for nobody. And, that word, I believe, goes a lot further. But I also see in today's day, not very many people are sticking to that word. One thing I do, and, whether this, I hope it serves you, is I often, if I'm doing any kind of relationship growth, if I'm thinking about doing business with anyone, I will create a process. I will request, hey, don't have, and so this is how far I go, because I want to make sure, and maybe this is just over my years and everything I've seen in business, it's like I want to make sure I'm dealing with the right people. So I'll often, and again, another little side note for all of you that are working with me, I'll often say, okay, can you do me a favor? I am interested, but get back to me, at like 10 a.m. on Tuesday next week, right? So as you're listening to this show, it's being, done on a Friday, June 7th. And so it'd be Tuesday, which would like 8, 9, 10, so June 11th at 10 a.m. And I'll write in my book, Frank or Jasmine or somebody's getting back to me by 10 a.m. And if they don't, I could tell you, like, at the beginning of the relationship, there will be no relationship. Because if and here's the way I look at it, okay? So again, if I can't count on you, when I give you a buying signal saying I'm very interested, to get back to me when you agree to get back to me. So it's like one of these things. Can you get back to me by Tuesday at 10 a.m.? Yes, 100% I'll get a hold of you at Tuesday at 10 a.m. That's now set. For me, that's like booking a meeting and not showing up, because I'm expecting your email by 10 a.m. And if you don't expect to ever do business with me. I will literally I don't care if you're the only tool, I'll build it to not have to work with you. Because, and again, I apologize if this sounds harsh, but this is just the way I believe we need to think in today's day and age. And here's the thing. If you're trying to get my business, and think about this from your prospect's perspective, my friends, okay? You're trying to get somebody's business and you can't even adhere to what you say you're going to do. How do you think that represents if you've been dealing with the prospect for a year, right? They're now a client and you're dealing with them for a year. Because you and I both know the big thing, challenge, whatever that prospects have, is the fact that at what point do I become a number? It's a fear. So you're actually initiating that fear before the prospecting even gets off to a wicked start. So that's just one strategy that I constantly use, but not only do I use it, I implement it with my prospects. So I will literally, like if it's a point where I'm worried about, say getting into work and not getting the email out at 10 a.m., right? So let's use that example again. I will literally come in on the Tuesday morning and I'll have a note in my agenda that I'll do the night before. So I'll do it Monday. And I'll either, before I leave the office on Monday, schedule that email to go out, or if I haven't done the work yet, because there's just been other priorities that need to get in front of that one, like sometimes somebody says, get me a rate by Tuesday. You're not necessarily going to do the rate right away. You'll give it to your team. You'll talk to some colleagues. You'll do some more. And maybe you're only doing the rate Tuesday morning because you have loads to book, right? So loads to book are higher priority than getting a rate to a prospect for a deadline next week, right? So we just prioritizing, that'd be a whole other show. But so in essence, what I do is I'll schedule that email as soon as the work's done. And I'll do it because I am going to make sure that that email hits their inbox at like 10 or 10:01, depending on, their feed. So that's one of the processes that I use. So again, always assume it's really the formula for high performance. It really is. It's a performance formula really to keep you in the zone and to keep you moving forward and to keep your customers knowing they can trust you when you say you're going to do something. Until next time, my friends, go out there, make every call educational, crush your sales, and have yourself a fantastic weekend.